this, but the president is, because he can't defend his gross abuse of his office. He can't defend withholding military aid from an ally at war, the damage he's done to our national security. All he can do is attack. And sadly, too many of the Republican members are willing to debase themselves by doing whatever the president asks.
The question is, why are Republicans placing this president above their oath of office?
I am clearly made up my mind. I'm not trying to hide the fact that I have disdain for the accusations in the process, so I don't need any witnesses.
House Intelligence Chairman Adam Schiff says that his Republican colleagues are debasing themselves on behalf of the president. But Senator Lindsey Graham doesn't see it that way. He says he has disdain for the entire impeachment process, and he thinks Democrats are going to be the ones in trouble following a Senate impeachment trial. Joining me now, civil, trial, and criminal defense attorney Midwin Charles, E.J. Dionne, Washington Post columnist and co-author of the book One Nation After Trump, and Washington Post opinion writer and MSNBC political analyst Jennifer Rubin. Where to begin? Where to begin? Where to begin? I think I'll begin with Adam Schiff. Let's play Congressman Schiff, and he's talking about the way that this might look differently if the tables were turned and the president was named Barack Obama.
I don't think any of us have any question that had Barack Obama engaged in the activity, the conduct, which is the subject of these articles of impeachment, every one of these Republicans would be voting to impeach him. And you know something? I have to hope to hell, George, if it were Barack Obama, I would vote to impeach him.
Midwin, you know, we play the "what if it was Obama" game a lot, and you know, probably too much. But the Lindsey Graham showed us what it would be if it was Bill Clinton, because he was out there railing and screaming that having a sexual affair means he had to go, and now all of a sudden he's a whole different guy.
Right, and what I find most unfortunate about this is that Lindsey Graham is an elected official. He is someone who has taken an oath to the Constitution, not to this individual president. And what I find even more unique about him is he's someone who had railed against Donald Trump not too long ago. He really said that if we elected Donald Trump, we would be in trouble. You know, he was a very staunch person against Donald Trump. Then all of a sudden he did this 180, and it doesn't make any sense because the 180 has been complete. There's been no discernment. There's been no individual thought in anything that Donald Trump represents anymore, which is odd, right? It's one thing to disagree with someone, right? We all disagree with people that are in our lives, that we love, our family members and what have you. But this idea of being hook, line, and sinker on every single thing that Donald Trump represents, it just doesn't make any sense. And I think also this does not bode well for our democracy, right? Because as we know, the House going forward with an impeachment is pretty much an indictment, but the trial will take place in the Senate. And the senators are going to take an oath in which they agree to be impartial in listening to the evidence. And he is saying in advance of this that he's not going to do it. I just can't imagine walking into a courtroom and having any party that represents the justice system to say, you know what, I've already made up my mind. If a judge did that, or a juror, or a judge, they would be censured. They would be censured and they would be removed. They would not be able to participate in that trial. So the idea that he would be so bold as to say this in advance of this trial, it just shows us how much they are chipping away at our democratic norms and our democracy.
It's jury nullification. And, you know, I have to go to you on this, Jennifer, because you wrote a new op-ed that says the following. While it's easy to dwell on the utter abdication of responsibility and loss of sanity in Republican ranks, or to worry that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is in violation of his oath, already scheming with the president and plotting to deny the country a real trial with fact witnesses, we should not forget that it takes an army of legislators, staffers, lawyers, and witnesses to investigate a corrupt president. Under constant abuse from right-wing media and efforts to trash the process from Republicans, they maintained focus, kept their dignity, and upheld their oaths of office and professional responsibilities. That does feel kind of like it is sort of that's something you might write at the end. It's like a eulogy in a sense, because not just for the party that you used to belong to, but for the democracy that we all still do.
Well, I hold out some hope, and you're right. I think it's a eulogy for the Republican Party. I've had a friendly argument with some of my former Republican friends as to whether the party is worth saving or not. I think, unfortunately, I won that one, and they are not. But I think what you have going on is this perfect complete difference between the party. On one side, you have Adam Schiff. You have people who went through 17 witnesses, hundreds of hours of testimony. They tried to get documents. And on the other hand, you have the Republicans. You have Lindsey Graham announcing in advance that he's going to lie when he takes that oath. That oath is a separate oath they're required to take under the Constitution because the act of being a juror is fundamentally different than their legislative role. The Constitution says you have to take a new oath that says, I will do impartial justice. He's already told us he's not going to do that. So is he going to lie? I guess his oath is just a farce. But that's what they do. They take serious matters of norms, of ethics, of democracy, and they make a joke out of it.
Yeah.
But perhaps the joke will be on them. Perhaps a handful, and that's all it takes, of Republican senators to intervene, to come up with fair rules, to demand actual fact witnesses, and to have a process of recusal when a juror demonstrates a refusal to understand and to accept the evidence is what we need. So we're looking at you, Mitt Romney. We're looking at you, Susan Collins. We're looking at you people who say you're fair, you're impartial, you're not all in the tank for Donald Trump. This is their moment. You need 51 people for the rules, and it's those few Republicans who can pull back from the farce and make this something approximating a fair trial.
That would require some dignity, and there hasn't been a whole lot of that going around among Republicans. Let me play Lindsey Graham. I was back and forth with my producer about whether I want to play this or whether it's just a bit too infuriating and too much. But you win the lottery on having to answer to this answer to this. Here is Lindsey Graham yesterday predicting an era of bipartisanship, and everyone will rally round the king when it is all said and done.
We find ourselves at home in great conflict, but I'm here to tell you, if you wonder what's going to happen in Washington, impeachment will be over probably by mid-January. Personally, I think President Trump will come out of this stronger. And the good news is that everybody in politics in America needs to prove to the American public we're not all completely crazy. So there may be a spirit of compromise coming post-impeachment, born of political necessity, if anything else.
You know, EJ, it seems appropriate that he was in a land where they have a king when he completely took the knee to the person he considers to be his king, Donald Trump. They've thrown away. The second article of impeachment is defiance of them, defiance of his own body. And he cares not about that. They care not about that. Have we reached a point where one of our two parties are essentially monarchists, where they believe that the president, as long as he's a Republican, ought to be king?
You know, in the last week or so, I have gotten a lot more alarmed than I was before. And I was obviously not particularly calm about what this presidency means. But what you've seen in the last week is really horrific. That statement by Lindsey Graham is itself crazy, the notion that we are all going to rally around Donald Trump after this is over. But that's not even the worst of it. The worst of it is, as you alluded to earlier in the show, a president calling American law enforcement, when they go after him, scum. That's the language of a would-be authoritarian. When you have the Attorney General of the United States taking the Justice Department and turning it into a defense and PR firm for the President of the United States. And when you have Republican members of Congress looking at what happened and saying, this is okay. Let's take the party label off the president. A president of the United States goes to a foreign power and says, I want you to investigate a political opponent of mine. That is despotism. Yeah, that is a threat to our liberties. And here you have people like Lindsey Graham saying that's okay. Yeah. This is very scary for the country.
And if a decade from now, a Democratic president goes to China and says, what have you got on Ivanka, with whom you did business? Or they go to the Saudis and they say, what have you got on Jared? You did a lot of business with him. Qatar. Did he bribe you to get money for this 666 building that he needed? What have you got? When this comes back, it could come back to their monarchs. It could come back to the Republicans' chosen royal family. It always comes back. But they don't seem to think so. By the way, just my producer just told me that Rudy Giuliani has now tweeted in the Republican preferred form of communication that in his next thread of tweets, he will be sharing some of the evidence he's gathered through hundreds of hours of research. Turn notifications on and stay tuned. Because you know what? if he's committing crimes, he can keep committing them because the king could pardon him. Look at how that works out. My panel's going to come right back. And when we come back, we're going to tell you something much happier. Who won the week?
Get new floor.